Today we have some more actual history about the first American settlements of California and Nevada. We will be reading from the perspective of the Paiute Indians who lived in northern Nevada. We will hear about their reactions to the large wagon trains that began coming through Nevada headed for California in the late 1840s. This includes their encounter with the ill-fated Donner Party in 1846 and 1847. We will be reading from this book, Life Among the Piutes, Their Wrongs and Their Claims, by Sarah Winnemucca Hopkins. This book was published all the way back in 1883. This is the same book from which we read the story of the red-haired cannibalistic Indian tribe that the Paiutes exterminated a couple hundred years before this time. As you will see, one of the Paiutes' initial fears about the coming white people was that they would kill and eat them. They had this fear even before they encountered the Donner Party and witnessed them eating each other to avoid starvation. It's possible that this fear of being killed and eaten stemmed from the tribe's experience with the red-haired Indians, who would catch and eat them several hundred years earlier. So here's the Paiute story of the coming of the white people, including those like the Donner Party who never made it to their destination. I was born somewhere near 1844, but am not sure of the precise time. I was a very small child when the first white people came into our country. They came like a lion, yes, like a roaring lion, and have continued so ever since, and I have never forgotten their first coming. My people were scattered at that time over nearly all the territory now known as Nevada. My grandfather was the chief of the entire Paiute nation, and was camped near Humboldt Lake, with a small portion of his tribe. When the news was brought to my grandfather, he asked what they looked like. When told that they had hair on their faces, and were white, he jumped up and clasped his hands together, and cried aloud, "My white brothers! My long-looked-for white brothers have come at last!" He immediately gathered some of his leading men, and went to the place where the party had gone into camp. Arriving near them, he was commanded to halt in a manner that was readily understood without an interpreter. Grandpa at once made signs of friendship by throwing down his robe, and throwing up his arms to show that he had no weapons, but in vain. They kept him at a distance. He knew not what to do. He had expected so much pleasure in welcoming his white brothers to the best in the lands, that after looking at them sorrowfully for a little while, he came away quite unhappy. But he would not give them up so easily. He took some of his most trustworthy men and followed them day after day, camping near them at night, and traveling in sight of them by day, hoping in this way to gain their confidence. But he was disappointed, poor dear old soul. I can imagine his feelings, for I have drank deeply from the same cup. When I think of my past life and the bitter trials I have endured, I can scarcely believe I live, and yet I do. And with the help of him who notes the sparrow's fall, I mean to fight for my downtrodden race while life lasts. Seeing they would not trust him, my grandfather left them, saying, "Perhaps they will come again next year." Then he summoned his whole people and told them this tradition. In the beginning of the world there were only 4, 2 girls and 2 boys. Our forefather and mother were only 2, and we are their children. You know that a great while ago there was a happy family in this world. 1 girl and 1 boy were dark, and the others were white. For a time they got along together without quarreling, but soon they disagreed and there was trouble. They were cross to one another and fought, and our parents were very much grieved. They prayed that their little children might learn better, but it did not do any good. And afterwards the whole household was made so unhappy that the father and mother saw that they must separate their children. And then our father took the dark boy and girl, and the white boy and girl, and asked them, "Why are you so cruel to each other?" They hung down their heads and would not speak. They were ashamed. He said to them, "Have I not been kind to you all, and given you everything your hearts wished for? You do not have to hunt and kill your own game to live upon. You see, my dear children, I have power to call whatsoever kind of game we want to eat, and I also have the power to separate my dear children, if they are not good to each other." So he separated his children by a word. He said, "Depart from each other, you cruel children. Go across the mighty ocean, and do not seek each other's lives." So the light girl and boy disappeared by that one word, and their parents saw them no more, and they were grieved, although they knew their children would be happy. And by the dark children grew into a large nation, and we believe it is the one we belong to, and that the nation that sprung from the white children will sometime send someone to meet us and heal all the old trouble. Now, the white people we saw a few days ago must certainly be our white brothers, and I want to welcome them. I want to love them as I love all of you, but they would not let me, they were afraid. But they will come again, and I want you, one and all, to promise that should I not live to welcome them myself, you will not hurt a hair on their heads, but welcome them as I tried to do. How good of him to try and heal the wounds, and how vain were his efforts. My people had never seen a white man, and yet they existed and were a strong race. The people promised as he wished, and they all went back to their work. The next year came a great immigration, and camped near Humboldt Lake. The name of the man in charge of the trains was Captain Johnson, and they stayed 3 days to rest their horses, as they had a long journey before them without water. During their stay, my grandfather and some of his people called upon them, and they all shook hands. And when our white brothers were going away, they gave my grandfather a white tin plate. Oh, what a time they had over that beautiful gift! It was so bright. They say that after they left, my grandfather called for all his people to come together, and he then showed them the beautiful gift which he had received from his white brothers. Nothing like it was ever seen in our country before. My grandfather thought so much of it that he bored holes in it and fastened it onto his head, and wore it as his hat. He held it in as much admiration as my white sisters hold their diamond rings, or a sealskin jacket. So that winter they talked of nothing but their white brothers. The following spring there came great news from the Humboldt River, saying that there were some more of the white brothers coming, and there was something among them that was burning all in a blaze. My grandfather asked them what it was like. They told him it looked like a man. It had legs and hands and a head, but the head had quit burning, and it was left quite black. There was the greatest excitement among my people everywhere about the man in a blazing fire. They were excited because they did not know there were any people in the world but the two, that is, the Indians and the whites. They thought that was all of us in the beginning of the world, and of course we did not know where the others had come from, and we don't know yet. But what a laughable thing that was! It was two black men wearing red shirts. The third year more immigrants came, and that summer Captain Fremont, who is now General Fremont. My grandfather met him, and they were soon friends. They met just where the railroad crosses the Truckee River, now called Wadsworth, Nevada. Captain Fremont gave my grandfather the name of Captain Truckee, and he also called the river after him. Truckee is an Indian word. It means all right or very well. A party of 12 of my people went to California with Captain Fremont. I do not know how long they were gone. During the time my grandfather was away in California, where he stayed till after the Mexican War, there was a girl baby born in our family. I can just remember it. It must have been in spring because everything was green. I was away playing with some other children when my mother called me to come to her, so I ran to her. She asked me to sit down, which I did. She then handed me some beautiful beads, and asked me if I would like to buy something with them. I said, "Yes, Mother, some pine nuts." My mother said, "Would you like something else that you can love and play with? Would you like to have a little sister?" I said, "Yes, dear Mother, a little sister, not like my sister Mary, for she won't let me play with her. She leaves me and goes with big girls to play." And then my mother wanted to know if I would give my pretty beads for the little sister. Just then the baby let out such a cry it frightened me, and I jumped up and cried so that my mother took me in her arms, and said it was a little sister for me, and not to be afraid. This is all I can remember about it. When my grandfather went to California, he helped Captain Fremont fight the Mexicans. When he came back, he told the people what a beautiful country California was. Only 11 returned home, one having died on the way back. They spoke to their people in the English language, which was very strange to them all. Captain Truckee, my grandfather, was very proud of it indeed. They all brought guns with them. My grandfather would sit down with us for hours, and would say over and over again, "Goody gun, goody gun, heap shoot." They also brought some of the soldiers' clothes with all their brass buttons, and my people were very much astonished to see the clothes, and all that time they were peaceable toward their white brothers. They had learned to love them, and they hoped more of them would come. Then my people were less barbarous than they are nowadays. That same fall, after my grandfather came home, he told my father to take charge of his people and hold the tribe, as he was going back to California with as many of his people as he could get to go with him. So my father took his place as chief of the Paiutes, and had it as long as he lived. Then my grandfather started back to California again with about 30 families. That same fall, very late, the immigrants kept coming. It was this time that our white brothers first came amongst us. They could not get over the mountains, so they had to live with us. It was on the Carson River, where the great Carson City now stands. You call my people blood-seeking. My people did not seek to kill them, nor did they steal their horses. No, no, far from it. During the winter my people helped them. They gave them such as they had to eat. They did not hold out their hands and say, "You can't have anything to eat unless you pay me." No, no such word was used by us savages at that time, and the persons I am speaking of are living yet. They could speak for us if they choose to do so. The following spring, before my grandfather returned home, there was a great excitement among my people on account of fearful news coming from different tribes, that the people whom they called their white brothers were killing everybody that came in their way, and all the Indian tribes had gone into the mountains to save their lives. So my father told all his people to go into the mountains and hunt and lay up food for the coming winter. Then we all went into the mountains. There was a fearful story they told us children. Our mothers told us that the whites were killing everybody and eating them. So we were all afraid of them. Every dust that we could see blowing in the valleys, we would say it was the white people. In the late fall, my father told his people to go to the rivers and fish, and we all went to the Humboldt River, and the women went to work gathering wild seed, which they grind between the rocks. The stones are round, big enough to hold in the hands. The women did this when they got back, and when they had gathered all they could, they put it in one place and covered it with grass, and then over the grass mud. After it is covered, it looks like an Indian wigwam. Oh, what a fright we all got one morning to hear some white people were coming. Everyone ran as best as they could. My poor mother was left with my little sister and me. Oh, I never can forget it. My poor mother was carrying my little sister on her back, and trying to make me run, but I was so frightened I could not move my feet. And while my poor mother was trying to get me along, my aunt overtook us, and she said to my mother, "Let us bury our girls, or we shall be killed and eaten up." So they went to work and buried us, and told us if we heard any noise not to cry out, for if we did they would surely kill us and eat us. So our mothers buried me and my cousin, planted sage bushes over our faces to keep the sun from burning them, and there we were left all day. Oh, can anyone imagine my feelings, buried alive, thinking every minute that I was to be unburied and eaten up by the people that my grandfather loved so much? With my heart throbbing and not daring to breathe, we lay there all day. It seemed that the night would never come. Thanks be to God, the night came at last. Oh, how I cried and said, "Oh, Father, have you forgotten me? Are you never coming for me?" I cried so I thought my heartstrings would break. At last we heard some whispering. We did not dare to whisper to each other, so we lay still. I could hear their footsteps coming nearer and nearer. I thought my heart was coming right out of my mouth. And then I heard my mother say, "Tea is right here." Oh, can anyone in the world imagine my feelings when I was dug up by my poor mother and father? My cousin and I were once more happy in our mother's and father's care, and we were taken to where all the rest were. I was once buried alive, but my second burial shall be forever, where no father or mother will come and dig me up. It shall not be with throbbing heart that I shall listen for coming footsteps. I shall be in the sweet rest of peace, I, the chieftain's weary daughter. While we were in the mountains hiding, the people that my grandfather called our white brothers came along to where our winter supplies were. They set everything we had left on fire. It was a fearful sight. It was all we had for the winter, and it was all burnt during that night. My father took some of his men during the night to try to save some of it, but they could not. It had burnt down before they got there. These were the last white men that came along that fall. My people said they had something like awful thunder and lightning, and with that they killed everything that came in their way. This whole band of white people perished in the mountains, for it was too late to cross them. We could have saved them, only my people were afraid of them. We never knew who they were or where they came from. So poor things, they must have suffered fearfully, for they all starved there. The snow was too deep. Early in the following spring, my father told all his people to go to the mountains, for there would be a great emigration that summer. He told them he had a wonderful dream, and wanted to tell them all about it. He said, "Within 10 days come together at the Sink of Carson, and I will tell you my dream." The sub-chiefs went everywhere to tell their people what my father had told them to say, and when the time came we all went back to the Sink of Carson. Just about noon, while we were on the way, a great many of our men came to meet us all on their horses. Oh, what a beautiful song they sang for my father as they came near us. We passed them, and they followed us, and we came near to the encampment. Every man, woman, and child were out looking for us. They had a place all ready for us. Oh, how happy everybody was! One could hear laughter everywhere, and songs were sung by happy women and children. My father stood up and told his people to be merry and happy for 5 days. It is a rule among our people always to have 5 days to settle anything. My father told them to dance at night, and that the men should hunt rabbits and fish, and some were to have games of football, or any kind of sport or playthings they wished. And the women could do the same, as they had nothing else to do. My people were so happy during the first 5 days. The women ran races, and the men ran races on foot and on horses. My father got up very early one morning, and told his people the time had come, that we could no longer be happy as of old, as the white people we called our brothers had brought a great trouble and sorrow among us already. He went on and said, "These white people must be a great nation, as they have houses that move. It is wonderful to see them move along. I fear we will suffer greatly by their coming to our country. They come for no good to us, although my father said they were our brothers, but they do not seem to think that we are like them. What do you all think about it? Maybe I am wrong. My dear children, there is something telling me that I am not wrong, because I am sure they have minds like us and think as we do. And I know that they were doing wrong when they set fire to our winter supplies. They surely knew it was our food. And this was the first wrong done to us by our white brothers. Now comes the end of our merrymaking." Then my father told his people his fearful dream, as he called it. He said, "I dreamt this same thing 3 nights, the very same. I saw the greatest emigration that has yet been through our country. I looked north and south and east and west, and saw nothing but dust. And I heard a great weeping. I saw women crying, and I also saw my men shot down by the white people. They were killing my people with something that made a great noise, like thunder and lightning. And I saw the blood streaming from the mouths of my men that lay all around me. I saw it as if it was real. Oh, my dear children, you may all think it is only a dream. Nevertheless, I feel that it will come to pass. And to avoid bloodshed, we must all go to the mountains during the summer, or till my father comes back from California. He will then tell us what to do. Let us keep away from the emigrant roads and stay in the mountains all summer. There are to be a great many pine nuts this summer, and we can lay up great supplies for the coming winter. And if the immigrants don't come too early, we can take a run down and fish for a month, and lay up dried fish. I know we can dry a great many in a month, and young men can go into the valleys on hunting excursions and kill as many rabbits as they can. In that way we can live in the mountains all summer and all winter too." So ended my father's dream. During that day one could see old women getting together, talking over what they had heard my father say. They said, "It is true what our great chief has said, for it was shown to him by a higher power. It is not a dream. Oh, it surely will come to pass. We shall no longer be a happy people as we are now. We shall no longer go here and there as of old. We shall no longer build our big fires as a signal to our friends, for we shall always be afraid of being seen by those bad people. Yes, they do eat people, because they ate each other up in the mountains last winter." This was the talk among the old women during the day. So that's it for this episode about the Paiutes' first interaction with white settlers, including the Donner Party who tried to make it through the mountains too late in the fall of 1846. Only 48 of the 87 members of that party survived. Most of the Donner Party camped near Truckee Lake to try to wait out the winter, but a group of 17 members of the party known as the Forlorn Hope attempted to cross the mountains, and 8 of those 17 people died. This may have been the group that Sarah Winnemucca was specifically referring to as the white people who ate each other up in the mountains during the winter. We may do a longer series on the Donner Party, written from the perspectives of the survivors, in future episodes on this channel. In a recent episode on this channel, some viewers noted that Chief Truckee appears to be making a Freemason symbol in this picture. This website, freemason574.org, says that among the earliest men to bring moral restraint, respect for law and justice, and for the rights of each individual human being, was Christopher Kit Carson. He had learned these attitudes toward other men at the altar of Freemasonry. Carson arrived in California in 1829. He was made a Mason in Montezuma Lodge No. 109, New Mexico, under the jurisdiction of the Grand Lodge of Missouri. Carson carried the first overland mail from Taos, New Mexico, to military headquarters at Monterey, California. He was with General John C. Fremont at the capture of Sonoma, California in 1846, ending the Bear Flag Revolt. So Freemasons like Kit Carson were with General Fremont in the Mexican-American War, along with Chief Truckee and the members of his tribe that he brought with him. This website also lists several Masonic lodges that were chartered in California beginning in 1848, so it certainly seems possible that Chief Truckee was a Mason. This channel is called Unworthy History because we talk about actual history that our history channels on TV and our history museums consider unworthy to keep alive, but this unworthy history has a place on this channel. If you'd like to support the mission of our channel, then consider joining our Patreon page or becoming a YouTube channel member. As a member, your support will be recognized at the end of each episode, and you will also have access to our members-only videos that we occasionally release. So if you want to see more episodes like this, then be sure to like and subscribe, and we'll see you next time on Unworthy History.